Hey, this is Bryce, and thanks for tuning into my YouTube channel, Jack of Trades. In this video, I'm going to go through all the steps that it takes to make this little part here. This is a gear carrier, which is used in the Tamiya King Cab gearbox to help support the counter gear on the, I guess, the outside portion of that gear. And what that does is it helps to ensure that that gear has good mesh with the differential gear, so that you don't strip out that differential gear or the counter gear. The stock part in that transmission is plastic, and if it breaks, which it does break, then it'll throw off that gear mesh, and then that leads to more problems with stripping off that differential or the counter gear. The differentials are actually, it wouldn't be the end of the world if you stripped it out, because you can replace that with an aftermarket differential. But that counter gear, I don't think those are used in any other cars, modern cars that have been re-released. So it would be a bad day to strip out that counter gear, just because they're harder to find. And actually, this transmission is used on several different cars. In addition to the King Cab, it's used in the Monster Racer, which is very similar to the King Cab, obviously, same chassis. That transmission is also used in the Astute as well as the Super Astute. And it's also used in the Madcap and the original Saint Dragon. That's the Saint Dragon that used the same chassis as the Madcap, not the modern re-release Saint Dragon. So it's used in 6 different cars, vintage cars. The problem with that transmission is, well, there's 2 problems. One, actually there's a couple problems. The first being that it has that ball differential, which is known to be problematic. The most common problem is that it just can't handle the torque, and it slips quite a bit. And then the more it slips, the more it tends to get burnt up, and people don't really set it up properly. They think that by tightening the screws that fixes it, but the way those gearbox, or the way that differential works, is it uses shims, which compress a couple of Belleville washers. Belleville washers are basically conical washers that act like springs, and by adjusting the shims, you adjust the preload on the diff. And it's kind of tedious because you have to take apart the differential, shim it, put it back together, check it, and then if it's not right, you have to take it apart again, re-shim it, and put it back together. And that being said, it's such a small contact area with that differential that it still doesn't really handle the torque very well. And you know, in the past there were options to fix that. Being a modified Tamiya gear diff, and then there's people that made conversion kits to put in a associated stealth transmission, which actually is probably the most bomb-proof solution, but that company doesn't make that conversion kit anymore. So it's not really a viable option because those kits are super rare and they're super expensive when they come up. The other option is to throw I think it's called a TCS, which is found on a Super Astute. The TCS is basically a slipper. You need something that's going to give a little bit when you're driving in high traction conditions, or if you're doing a lot of jumping and landing on throttle. You need something like a slipper that's going to give. But those TCS kits are also super hard to find, and they're super expensive, so it's not really a viable option if you want to get your King Cab up and running for a moderate investment into repairing and making that transmission more robust. So what I've been recommending, and it seems to have worked on my runner, is this little gear carrier, as well as modified Tamiya gear diff. I think it's the one from the Avanti, I believe. So I had to do another run of these parts. I had run out. I've been selling them to people, and I still need them for my cars. So I went ahead and did another batch of them, and I thought it was a good opportunity to go ahead and come up with a video showing all the steps involved, because it's such a small little part, but there's a lot going on with it, and you know, it's quite a bit of machining to get a finished part. To do a run, it's about 2 days of work to get a batch of these, and that's only like a batch of 32 or so. So it's a weekend, and then you get a pile of little parts. So I'll go ahead and flip the camera around so I want to kind of show you a little more in depth as to where this part goes, because I don't think a lot of people understand what it does and where it goes. And then I will go ahead and show the footage from the fabrication of this little part. Alright, so let's show you where this part goes on this car. Just to confirm, this is the part in question. So you kind of see all the little features that have been machined into this part. And just to finish, you know, even just finishing takes a couple of hours to get the parts nice and shiny, and we go ahead and sand the top and bottom surface just to give that kind of brushed aluminum look. Alright, so here is half of the transmission. Half of it's kind of outside the motor plate, the other half is internal. So we've got our pinion gear, and then we have a spur gear, and that spur gear just slides right off. It's supported on this shaft here, and that shaft is supported on the outside by the gear cover. So you have the gear cover is integral to this gearbox. And then this is the part in question. So this is, I call it a gear carrier, but it basically supports the outside portion of this counter gear. This counter gear engages the smaller gear on the spur gear, and then it also engages the differential. So without this bracket, that counter gear is unsupported, and that messes up the mesh both with the differential and the almost lost that screw, both the differential and the spur gear. Alright, so that kind of just, that's the gear carrier supports, there's a little counter bore in that gear carrier which supports the shaft that the counter gear rides on. And without it, this is pretty floppy. I can move that around. And the plastic ones do break actually. So this is a direct replacement for the plastic carrier. So yeah, without further ado, I'll go ahead and start the footage for the fabrication of these parts. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of steps involved, and hopefully after seeing it you can appreciate how much work goes into these parts. So that's it. I'll go ahead and kick over to the footage showing the fabrication of the gear carrier. Thanks for tuning in and watching. If you find yourself coming back to these videos, please hit the subscribe button, and if you like the video, hit the like button. Take care. Bye.